Got the Samurai back up on jack stands again. So I got a little bit of forward and back play on the wheel. I'm suspecting front wheel bearings, maybe Kingpin. I'm going to pull the wheel bearings out, check them out, repack them, and then retorque the spindle nuts, make sure all that's set up correctly. And I'm also going to, if that does not fix it, pull the Kingpin out and remove a shim from the Kingpin bearing. And hopefully that'll take care of some of this wobble I've got, because it's showing up around 35 miles an hour, making the whole front end shaking back and forth. Let's tear into it and see what it is. Alright, first thing I gotta do, obviously take the lug nuts off. Got 5 of them, 17 millimeter. Then I'm gonna grab a 10 millimeter and a 12 millimeter to take the outer locking hub and then the rest of the locking hub off so that I can get to the bearings. So let's grab those tools real quick. I had to take those off just to get to the inner. That's been a little stucky there. Just working back and forth and it'll come out. I'll tether the gasket. Okay, gasket came with it. Now that I got those 6 bolts off, I'm gonna go ahead and, there's a C-clip in here. Grab a pick and a screwdriver. The C-clip slips onto the end of the axle, comes out through the spindle. Now I'm going to switch from the 10 to the 12 millimeter socket. So I can get these off. Ready to come off, but the caliper's holding it on. So I've got 2 17 millimeter bolts on the backside. So I've got that loose. I'm going to go ahead and work this back and forth a little. Just to try and get a little bit of extra clearance between the brake pads and the caliper to make it easy to get back on. Set him on top of the spring perch. Alright, so now the inner hub is ready to come out. Should be silicone sealed. Now, got these 2 big old nuts in here. 2-inch nut. Wipe that off a little bit and then get a big old socket. There's a lock nut, and then there's a retaining washer with bend over tabs. One's going to be bent onto the front nut, and one should be bent onto the back nut to hold everything in place. You want to unbend those, and you can take your 2-inch spindle nut off, take the washer out, take your other spindle nut off, and then there should be one more washer, and we can pull the wheel bearings. Check them out. Mine doesn't actually have one bent in the other direction. They're both bent over onto the front nut, and the problem with that is the back nut sets your preload to the bearing. Then the retaining washer keeps that back nut from backing out by locking into the front nut, which is torqued down to a higher torque than the back nut. That way you don't have excessive preload on your bearing, but you've also got a good torque on the spindle nut. So that could be why be why I had a little play there. So, oh, rolls good. Ooh, look at that dirt. Let's go ahead and back that nut out and check out the bearing. There's that washer. These are actually definitely a good idea to order this beforehand if you think it's already been bent a few times, because I couldn't get one anywhere at the local. I tried O'Reilly's, Advanced, and AutoZone, and nobody could even order these in. So you have to go through like Low Range or somebody and get these ordered, because apparently they're not a common shelf item anymore. Not in my area. All right, let's get the hanger nut off. I'm not even sure that nut was tight. That could be my issue. I'll pull the hub off. I don't think the bearings are worn out to any extent, so I just wanted to repack them mostly, but we'll check them out and see. Here's your second washer. Alright, well, I forgot to turn the camera on. So all I've done so far is pull the outer and inner bearings out, pull the inner wheel seal off, and inspected the bearings and races. The races look good. There's no chips, cracks, there's no metal that looks different. If you just a piece of metal, you've got a relatively even look all the way around. So if you've got something, well, this is a bad wheel bearing. Set chip. There's some pitting and chips, and that's due to either a loss of hardness due to inadequate grease or possibly rust from moisture in the bearing. Either way, that's a bad wheel bearing. You'll feel those things going down the road. They'll change the clearance between the bearing and the race itself. In the race, you can see additional issues. Yeah, it's harder to see on the race. You can see little imperfections in there. That's what you're looking for. If you see those, if you see things like that, your wheel bearings are bad. Change them. These ones look nice and clean and smooth all the way around. There's a little bit of scoring in them, but I'm not too concerned with what I see there. I don't think it's going to be a problem, especially because I plan on doing a whole front end rebuild after a little while. Alright, now I've checked them out. I'm going to go ahead and repack these bearings, put them together. Probably going to go ahead and pull the upper kingpin out, pull one shim off of that, and so let's set up and get to it. So I'm not at all fond of this style of bearing packer, but it's all they had at the store, and I don't have a cup type, so let's load it up and pack these bearings. I'm going to go ahead and pre-fill the center of the bearing, just so I don't have to pump the gun 800 times to get this to work. Put your inner bearing in first. That way the wheel seal will hold it in place while you put in the outer bearing. Make sure there's plenty of grease in there. Alright, that's ready to put back on. This is like a thrust washer, I assume, to go against the inner race of the bearing so that your locking nut doesn't bite into it or damage it. So there's a little groove right here, a little tab right there. Line those two up. So I got that in. I believe both nuts are the same. I don't think it matters which one goes where. I believe they're exactly the same nut for the spindle. So on your bearing lock nut here, your spindle nut, you initially want to torque it down to 60 pounds. And what you're doing is you initially want to torque it down to 60 to 65 foot-pounds to seat the bearing. And that just helps make sure that both bearings are fully pressed into the races and that you don't have any excessive play when you get done. So once you've got that torque to 60 to 65 foot-pounds, you want to break it back loose down to 0 torque and then torque it back to 7 to 11 foot-pounds. Okay, I'm right at about 10 foot-pounds. Everything should be seated. I'm going to slide this retaining washer on, your locking washer. And this is your locking nut, and this one will go down to 60 foot-pounds and stay. So your inner nut goes down to 65 to seat the bearing, back it off to 0, then torque it back down to 7 to 11 foot-pounds to set your preload. Then put your retaining washer in, then the outer bearing gets torqued to 60 to 65 foot-pounds, and then bend your tabs over to keep the nuts from backing off. Then look at your flats and align the tab with the flats. And that should keep everything from coming loose. Now we got the wheel bearing set. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this kingpin off and take a shim out of that. Now on the kingpin, let's put the hub back on.